Hi, and welcome to Korean Mobility with James Mcilvena in August 2026. James, how are you?
Really well, thank you.
Awesome. Now, we're going to be talking today about change, value, and opportunity. So, fun things and positioning yourself for what's next. Now, the reason for this is as much as anything that we know this last year has been a crazy time of people talking about pretty much nothing else other than AI. But we have seen a shift, and you have definitely seen a shift. And I'd love for you to share where that shift has come from, James.
Yeah, I think the shift is in two main ways. So I was at an HR symposium last week, and I definitely noticed both in the titles of what people were speaking to, but then the content that a year ago or 12 months ago when I was attending the same event and similar events, it was actually about, what is AI? How will it impact us? There was a lot more sort of curiosity around what's out there. I think 12 months
Mm,
on, people are actually much more aware of the tools that exist and which tools might be most relevant for them. But now it's all
yeah.
about the change that's required to extract benefit and a greater understanding of the impact that means for what's expected of leaders, what's expected of team members, and
Yeah.
really now starting to focus in on the change process. So, do we have agile leaders? Do we have employees which are committed to learning? Are we hiring now more for skills rather than roles and titles? This is the it feels like the conversation's matured a lot from what's out there and the FOMO of they've got AI and I don't yet, and how many agents should we have?
So true. So true. All right. So, what kinds of change are you actually currently seeing across organizations and careers? What sorts of things came up perhaps at the conference?
So I think one that is really been consistent right throughout is that workforce planning is difficult because the first step is understanding how the work is redesigned and understanding the process and the maturity around thinking what is the right question to ask. And I'll give you an example. The right question to ask is not, here's an AI tool. How do I actually jam this into an existing process and hope that I get greater productivity or everyone
Yeah.
gets the time back? It's, how do I look at the process? How do I look at the data inputs?
Mm,
How much integrity is there into the data inputs for any tool, whether it's an agent, whether it's automated process. So how good is understanding of the commitment to clean data, and then looking at the components where actually a human really adds value here. So whether that's checking or not. And one of the keynotes at the symposium I went to, I love it. She likened AI, because it's new on the block, to like a 5 year old. She goes, a very, very smart 5 year old. But she said, would you give the keys and everything in your entire business to like a 5 year old and let it just go and run amok? And the
yeah.
answer is no. And so was, I thought, one of the best analogies I've heard of in regards to how important it is to have humans still critically involved in cleaning up and clearing the processes around where there'll be benefit and where there won't be, where the humans are needed.
Yeah.
And so that then led into, in answer to your question, how roles are being reshaped and what's expected of people. So it's actually being a really good understanding the business, understanding the essential human elements of the business, and being really good parents to that very good and very smart 5 year old kid.
I love that analogy. That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, they're either in kindy or just about to start school at that point. So it's pretty basic. I remember actually when my daughter went to school, and it's that moment of literally that first year. It's like, prep year is you're not coming in with the parents anymore, but you still you're a littly. You're the smallest in the kind of group. So we need to still look after you. So no, I love that analogy. Why do you think so? If we think about change as this new thing, if you like, and I mean change is not new, but moving from AI, it's like how are people embracing change? And we're definitely going to talk to that for sure throughout today. But why can that environment feel particularly confronting to someone who's in career transition? Because it's not new, but yet when you're in career transition, this idea of change can feel really confronting. Why do you think that is?
I think because the pace of change. So you're absolutely correct. Change is not new. The phrase "change is the only constant thing" has been around for a very, very long time. But the pace of change can be particularly disruptive and sometimes even disturbing for people who are in transition because they don't recognize the role titles anymore. The way people are actually
Yeah.
asking for you to demonstrate your capabilities is very different to the way it's been. If they're assessing for transferable skills and capability to be agile when it comes to learning or changing approach to leadership, or there are things that are being asked for that look very different to the way they looked even as recently as 3 years ago. And so unless you have a way to become familiar and some support to become familiar with the new reality of what's being asked for, it can be really daunting for people.
Yeah, no, brilliant, brilliant insight. So we want to talk a bit then about what that continuous change means for careers, because there's no doubt there is an impact. You've just alluded to some of that. So has the idea, do you think, of a predictable sort of linear career become less realistic then in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible, but
Yeah,
the ability to sort of think of, staying in a lane and just progressing in a vertical fashion is been dying for quite a while.
yeah,
And what it does do, if people are tied to that concept, is it just severely limits opportunity. And then that's where we find people getting frustrated because they're saying, well, there's nothing out there for me. But really, the answer is there are things out there for people, but they are not thinking in a broad enough manner to find the things that might be relevant to them. So that fixed mindset is a massive inhibitor, and then that will flow into a frustration that no one needs me, no one wants me, there's nothing out there for me worth applying to or investigating.
so true. So it's, they're not as obvious. It's just, yeah, how do I it's hard to navigate to something you don't know don't know where it is or what it is. So do you think then that employers are placing greater value on adaptability, curiosity, and learning agility as a result of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And looking for ways to either have it demonstrated. So if people can provide examples of where they have embraced those types of mindsets, absolutely. But further than that, they're actually looking at how they test for these things in individuals as well at the moment. So
yeah,
it is going to increasingly become part of the way people screen and select who is right because of course, they're still looking for someone to fulfill a role that exists.
yeah,
Now they're thinking, the organizations are thinking more broadly and thinking, I'm looking for someone to fulfill the role that I'm recruiting today, but I want that person to then grow with me. I don't want to be having a discussion in 12 months that, you haven't changed and grown with us and we need to have a different
mm,
discussion about you either separating or you're having performance difficulties. And so we would rather at the offset hire for the ability to grow and develop with them.
yeah, brilliant. So I guess one of the things that happens sort of that we see in these situations is that people, because they can't necessarily see what's next for them, it's not so obvious as we talked about earlier. Sometimes there's a sense of, well, maybe I just need to dumb myself down a bit in order to kind of, get my next role. And I've got an example to share with you, a situation or someone that I spoke to recently, just really around that sort of positioning begins with protecting your sense of self-worth in career transition, but in your career generally. So I recently spoke with someone who's a senior executive, their role was made redundant. And as a result of that, their kind of immediate mindset thought was maybe I'm just worth less. Maybe I just need to, reconcile that for myself so that I don't have such high expectations. And I can't quite see. I've had a look out there, I've had conversations with people. There's nothing that seems quite clear for me. and perhaps I'm just not as good as I thought I was, or there's that sense of dumbing down. So I wanted to talk to you about this in a little bit of detail, James. So why do you think people so quickly interpret redundancy as a judgment, or their personal or professional value is diminished? Why do you think that happens?
I think because at its core, going through any process of redundancy is a bit of an attack on people's sense of identity. A lot of identity is tied up in their role, particularly if that role holds like a high sense of purpose for them. And you can have 100 people tell you it's not personal, it's about the role, it's not about the individual. But I've spoken to way too many people to know that that is seen as more of a platitude than a reality. Now,
Yeah.
the two coexist. It's not that it is personal, and it's not that anything that's said is untrue, but the way it is perceived, to divorce that to be like, well, it was, very rare are the people that I speak to who are not impacted by it, and it doesn't give them some kind of knock in their sense of identity and self-worth. So to the second part of that, I get it, but the bit that sort of stands out is nothing has really changed in that short period of time from the feeling they had when they were in the prior role. So
Yeah.
their knowledge doesn't all of a sudden disappear. Their experience doesn't all of a sudden disappear. Their people skills don't all of a sudden disappear. All of those things, they have in exactly the same quantity
Yeah.
as they had when they were in their prior role. And then you add to that, there is an amazing opportunity throughout the process to actually learn and acquire new skills. And as we've just talked about, to investigate new and different pathways that are potentially exciting and aligned to passion projects or values that weren't fully realized in their old role.
Mm.
It should and can be an exciting time. But I understand why people have that feeling, but I just don't think that feeling stacks up in reality when it comes to what they are really bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, that is the true benefit, I think, of having that sort of conversation with a coach and kind of almost seeing yourself in the mirror, and understanding, actually, hold on a minute, yeah, maybe I hadn't looked at it that way, or getting different perspectives, getting a bit of a reframe on sort of not only where you're at, but where the market's at. So these are brilliant points. How do you think then that someone can assess their market value objectively when their confidence has been shaken as a result of redundancy?
Yeah, it begins with exactly what you just stated. Yeah, yeah. Have a discussion with your coach. Do some assessments. Like, it's almost getting to people to actually realize that your value has not changed at all, and reminding yourself. It can be a simple reflection exercise on the things you've achieved and the moment you felt most
Yeah.
powerful in your career, and the amazing things you've done over the last 24 months, and some of the positive discussions that happened in performance reviews. And again, it's like that reflection on all of the things that you might just be forgetting in that moment,
Mm.
and reminding yourself of all of those things. Now, that also is like a great little ready reckoner, not just to make people re-recognize their true worth. It's also a great little ready reckoner for things you might want to reference in networking meetings or interviews, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the same purpose. It's that refresher on, I do some pretty amazing stuff and have done some pretty amazing stuff. And then you can add to that, I'm learning some pretty amazing stuff, and a bit of a list of things that can be then referenced.
Yeah. I mean, in my headline, it talks about, reminding people how amazing they are. And I genuinely believe that's kind of part of my role. But I think that is it. I think a lot of people, because they've been so busy, involved in their previous role, career, some people have multiple roles in one organization. When you unplug from that, it is a bit sort of like, oh, okay, who am I now, and where am I now, and what's next? So yeah, love that. And if you're present to it, though, as you say, you then can speak about that in interviews and applications and conversations, which is really powerful. So when might flexibility then be strategically valuable, and how is that different from settling because you feel less worthy?
Yeah, I mean, settling is, I think, people ever truly settling? I mean, I think people feel they're settling if they take a role that might be, you know, less responsibility or a lower overall package than what they've previously had. But I'd argue that when we're talking about non-linear careers, there's so much more than those things, and it might feel like settling, but it's actually not. And that then the flexibility to balance out
Yeah,
total benefits, not just remuneration when it comes to your considerations, when it comes to what am I learning, what is the opportunity, how aligned is this to me, what level of flexibility do I get? Taking a total lifestyle and wellness view
yeah,
um, will actually mean that people are assessing in a different manner, and that doesn't mean that that every metric is all headed north. It just means they actually understand the purpose and they understand what they're getting out of it. And if you are very clear about what you're getting out of any move you're making,
yeah,
it's not settling. Now, the final thing is I wouldn't want to ignore the financial reality of the fact that sometimes the settling involves the financial wellness perspective, where people are saying, actually, I just need to start earning again. That in and of itself is not necessarily settling. That is, I'm taking a next step. But what I am going to do as I take my next step is I'm going to continue learning. I'm going to continue networking. I'm going to continue all the good habits that I've learned. And this might just be one step on the way to whatever's next. That's not settling. That's actually realistically looking at where I'm at and what it's going to take to move forward. Again, non-linear.
yeah, totally. It's kind of like the holistic value of the opportunity in front of you. And now, obviously, people are plugging into multiple options and not just the one with the portfolio career type scenario. So lots of different choices there. So just another, I guess, perspective, I think, on this whole idea of kind of value of and self-worth during sort of the career transition process. One of the things that people say quite often to me is, oh, I'm not sure if you remember me. And I think, of course I do. I feel like I spent part of my life with you, because it's so meaningful. I mean, I love the work that I get to do. I know a lot of our team feel very much the same. And actually every coach probably remembers, I'd say probably 100% of the people that they've worked with. Like it's just one of those roles where you just do. So I find it really interesting. I'm always struck by this because, of course, we remember them. But then I think, well, what's going on for someone to even ask me that question? It could just be that they're being very polite. But I think there might be something more underneath that, James. So I just want to unpack this a little bit. So what do you think sits beneath those words? And I'm not sure that you remember me. Like, what do you think is going on for that individual, particularly when they've been through career transition?
Yeah, words are important. First impressions are important.
Mm,
Not sure if you remember me as already almost taking a linked back to the topic from earlier, linked to that. I'm actually a little lower in self confidence than what I was. I mean,
yeah,
is unless that's the way you've always introduced yourself, in which case I would also suggest you rethink about how you introduce yourself if that's it. But I mean, ultimately, given your question was people specific in transition, this is an,
mm,
I know we've talked about this in prior episodes, like be very, very clear on what your marketing plan is, how you're going to say and represent yourself.
yeah,
And that first line needs to be something that is, you'll remember me from X, or I think we're at the same event when I was presenting on Y as a subject matter expert. That positions you in a whole different way for whatever
yeah.
comes next in that discussion. Then I'm not sure if you'll remember me. So if that is a line you're using, I would suggest reflect on it, talk to your coach about it, think about something that is really strong and actually aligned to the marketing plan around how you're going to talk about yourself and your experiences.
It kind of takes me back to my NLP days of like, people don't process the negative, the not. Or we can't. So it's like, always talk in the positive and focus on what you do want. And even with that sort of previous story, with if you're feeling self or less feeling self like you're less worthy, even if you verbalize that, particularly to someone that you're networking with, if it's a trusted friend and it's just someone you're having a bit of a heart to heart with, that's kind of okay because it's just having that conversation. But if you're actually networking with someone and demonstrating your worth, but putting that out, it almost, once it's out there, you can't take it back again. So it's like, just be careful. I think being aware of word usage and just, what you're creating with them is really important. Yeah, awesome. All right. So other question for you, how can someone reconnect with former colleagues, do you think, and contacts from a position of contribution rather than apology?
I mean, it is reasonably simple one in that what are they interested in? So actually having a think about what that conversation might entail. And if that conversation is going to entail, hey, Tee-Jay, I'm not sure if you will remember me, but do you have any jobs open? Like, that's not a great dynamic for a networking discussion.
Yeah.
A strong, hey, Tee-Jay, we work together on XYZ project. It's tremendously successful. I loved working with you on that. I've noticed a few things recently. Just want to pick your brain on what you were seeing and if those things align.
Yeah.
Really strong opening. You've established like credibility and you've established market positioning as well around that you have something to offer that discussion. It's not just an ask.
And a level of relatedness as well. When you even said that to me, I was like, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know you, or and you definitely know me. I would further say on LinkedIn, when we have these discussions, obviously I organize a number of career fairs in my role. Reaching out on LinkedIn, there's always the previous conversations. Emails, very much you start from scratch each time you're sending a new thread, whereas LinkedIn and your messages, there's always that relatedness almost in the messages. So that's kind of something to bear in mind. It's like, I kind of think of it as like, constant communication over time, and you can actually see the relationship that you've built, which is actually really powerful. So positioning your value for a changing market, I think this is something that's really important for people, certainly in career transition, but I think even in career, even if you're ongoing employment, how are you positioning yourself? And I mean, we're talking about sort of self-worth and so on at the moment as well. But we want to move from internal self-worth more to external communication of value, because we know that often people are, moving from one career even to a completely different career or industry. How do you build the bridges is kind of what we're going to talk about here. So my question for you, James, is, where are we? So why is it no longer enough to lead with a job title or a list of responsibilities when you're applying for a role or, showing what you've done? Why is that not powerful anymore?
Yeah, I think that it's really important. It links to that part of our discussion earlier around people are thinking beyond a singular role. And that positioning begins from, and I'm not at all suggesting that you're ignoring the fact that there is a role with specific need and expectations that, would occur if you were to join the organization in that role. But the importance is actually to show that flexibility. And to the second part of your question, particularly if you're looking at something which is a bit of a career pivot, and you're trying to demonstrate transferable skills, and you are running with the whole, I don't tick 100% of the requirements, I tick 70% of the requirements. The other 30 will be the interest level for me to grow into, and here's evidence of where I've grown into prior roles and that I'm an adaptable learner. And by the way, just quietly, that also means that I'm going to continue to grow and evolve with your organization. Those three things together, hopefully, can already hear how an employer would go, oh, okay, you're giving a different value proposition. Stopping on only one of those three things or missing out on the other two leaves an element of doubt. So I'll give you an example on all of them. The first one, Now, if you're saying I'm 70% there, just take a punt on me for the other 30%, trust me, right? They're probably hearing 30% is a lot of a punt, right? So maybe I'll go for the candidate that's 100% there. Then positioning okay, you don't have to quantify the percentage. I'm just using this for illustrative purposes.
Just an example, yeah.
Yeah. And here's my track record. I've bridged the gap before. There's my extra confidence, and I'll do it again. And then the final point being, and point out, like, don't just assume that they will draw the line that you will grow with them, and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is really important because I'm actually really excited about your company, your mission, what you do, and I just hope to be able to continue to impress you in this role and then grow with the business. Those three together, compelling proposition, bang, you're hired.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds so simple, but you're so right that people get stuck in one or the other, and then there is no kind of like, well, there's so much missing. And I think, I talk about this in sort of, how do you show rather than tell people what you do? How do you demonstrate that? And again, this is verbally doing that, and I love this. So how can professionals then translate their achievements, let's say, into evidence of future value? How can people do that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, some will show already a flexibility or a future focused or a growth mindset. So achievements that show growth and adaptability
Yeah.
should be really highlighted. But any achievement is valuable to demonstrate,
Yeah.
whatever your next step in your career is, because it actually proves the ability to do stuff well. So it doesn't have to be all focused on future. I would not want people to come away from listening to this and that be the message they take away. It is still really important to think about the highlights in in past roles that are almost directly linked to the future role. Absolutely
Yeah.
important. But if you can, the ask is stretch your mind a little bit further and if you can sprinkle in one that actually also shows growth, it's going to do you the world of good.
Yeah, and relevance. Like it's like, how is this going to make a difference in their environment? Like, it's kind of that kind of future thinking almost. You've got to do a bit of time travel in this process.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think so? Obviously, we're in career transition, James. It'd be remiss for us not to talk about it. And at the end of the day, this is to support people who are in career transition. So I want to talk now about a little bit why it is important to value to sort of why it is valuable to embrace the career transition process. No matter how you're doing it, whether you're doing it with us or somewhere else, like it's really career transition is really an opportunity of development rather than a lost or empty space in your career process. There's really a lot of opportunity here. So I really want to talk to this, James. So what do you think people can gain when they really engage fully with the process rather than just rushing past it and sort of hoping to get into that next role at breakneck speed?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is two major benefits they get out of it. The first major benefit is that for someone whose career may have been a little bit more on autopilot, it's one thing to the next thing to the next thing it's a proper chance to stop, pause, reflect, and reset. And the tools, whether that's the assessments, whether that's the opportunity to have a coach that you can talk with for the first time ever, they're things that allow you to do that really well. And so when I chat to people who've made the most of the experience, it's like, wow, it didn't feel like it at the start, but it was actually liberating to truly think about what I do and don't want to do. As an example, for the first time ever, people have always wondered, I wonder what it would be like if I went into consulting and did a portfolio career. Have assessed it. Doesn't have to be their thing, but they've assessed it. People have always said, I wonder what it'd be like to be an entrepreneur. For the first time ever, I probably had the time and space to properly assess it. Not it's a pipe dream that I think about sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, but I'm too busy with my job.
Yeah.
It's a proper assessment of it. So that would be point number one. And then point number two would be they've actually built a skill set and a resilience around how they think more deeply about being in control of their career that will serve them well, not just throughout the transition,
Yeah.
but for the rest of their career. They'll position themselves differently around how they network and not get so caught up in thinking internal only, in all future roles. That's a really important group of skills that are actually going to help people with mobility, even if they never go through another, redeployment or outplacement process.
Mm.
They will still have a truly beneficial set of skills that they can actually use to support growing their career.
So true. And I see, obviously, unfortunately, people, I've been through 3 redundancies, a number of people have been through multiple ones. Those skills are never lost. So even if you're going from one new role to another, there's also a transition between there. So definitely useful skills. So what do you think clients, though, often learn about themselves that they might never have examined while they're actually in a role, whilst they're in transition?
I think a lot of time it's the how much they either do or don't align with the values and the purpose of the roles that they have been doing would be point number one. Point
Yeah.
number two would be they probably actually learn sort of the depth and the breadth of the skills they actually have and have, but and have been able to gain,
Yeah.
particularly through more recent roles, but just generally over their career, because very rarely do people stop and take stock of those two items.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking back, what do you think successfully transitioned clients then often say that they gained from the experience of going through career transition?
I think the main thing is, it's the first time ever in my career that I've actually stopped and assessed and thought a moment. For a lot of people, it may have been, one job to another, and that's either sort of internally where one role led naturally to another, not always in a linear manner, but that sense of stop, pause, reflect, set a direction and go after it.
Yeah.
It's the first time they've ever had the chance to do that. And that is both refreshing and enlightening for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing as well, when I see people really embracing those sort of peer conversations with other people who are in career transition as well, really kind of getting a sense of the breadth of opportunity in the market. Because again, when they've been plugged into one organization, particularly for a long length of time, which we have a lot of people who've had long tenure with their organizations, albeit they've moved through various roles. It is a really fresh perspective. And I know talking to lots of people that they kind of like, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And that's
Exactly.
refreshing too, absolutely. So change as opportunity. So we started here sort of talking about the fact that everyone's been talking about AI, but actually what we're seeing is that change almost is the new black, and everyone's kind of talking about that now. So in terms of how can curiosity, do you think, James, help professionals explore adjacent roles and industries or ways of working now?
Yeah. I mean, I think that links very much to the comment I just made. And I know we've mentioned this in the past, but it was important enough for LHH to invest in a assessment and a very specific tool for people to be able to do just that. And so, for those that have access and have not yet done it, going through that career canvas process,
Yeah.
which actually takes on board, values, skills, purpose, and actually throws up some left of center stuff. And they're not all going to stick. Like, I've done it myself when trialing the tool and going, well, that's an interesting take on where I could potentially go. But great. Like, it speaks to the whole idea of, how do you actually understand what you want and what you don't want unless you've actually taken some time to assess it. And yes, some things will take sounds interesting, let's delve a little deeper, and others you might rule it out immediately for a range of different reasons. But it's getting the mind thinking in the right direction. And it's
Yeah.
getting people to sort of move out of that siloed thinking around what's possible. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a very interesting conversation with someone today, and it's really interesting when you hear about people's almost, they're like side projects that have been doing, or kind of like little roles that they're like, I'd love to do more of that, but I don't even know I should put it on my LinkedIn. And it's like, yes, you should, because it's kind of part of the holistic skill set that you have. I'm actually wondering, James, if yours would have something to do with surfing. But anyway, we'll put that to one side for now.
You'll find it mentioned in there, Tee-Jay.
I thought so. So, what is the one step that you think people could take this week to position themselves more confidently?
If I would be making a little list or have AI do it for you on what you've just listened
Yeah.
to and work your way through it, because I think we've really just gone through some of the key playbook items, which
Mm,
is depending on which stage you're at. So if you're feeling that loss of confidence and you actually just need to take some of those actions to recover your sense of the fact that your worth has been in no way diminished by the
yeah.
experience you just had. And if anything, you have the opportunity now to grow and assess and to provide a different value proposition to the market. It might be re-looking at the way you introduce yourself or your marketing plan or how you actually leave people with an understanding of, yeah, I get what's going on in the industry. I get what's going on in your business. I actually understand how I fit into all of this. I'm going to show an ability not just to prove I'm like a great person to be engaged with today, but then also have the capability to grow and work with you. And then for those that are maybe closer to the end of their experience, what did I get out of the experience? Did all the things we just discussed in those last few questions, did I grasp those opportunities or did I race through from start to finish as fast as possible?
Yeah.
Hope that I'm back in a full-time role and earning salary as fast as possible, and that's great. Maybe I'll bank a bit of the redundancy payment, but did I miss out on something?
Mm.
And if you've done that, that's great, by the way. You still have the opportunity to think about the things that you could have done, learn those lessons, and people can be doing this stuff at all stages of their career, not just when they're in transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's a question I want to ask you, and I mean, you've talked about fixed mindset, so growth mindset is definitely there in terms of mindset. But what mindset would you encourage listeners to carry forward into this changing market? I mean, growth mindset, absolutely, being open to opportunity. How else would you what else do you think is going to be beneficial for people?
Yeah, look, I think it was when we touched on the flexibility and the non-linear nature of things. And so, the growth mindset is great, but the growth mindset without the flexibility to consider different options,
Mm,
you can talk about having a growth mindset all you want, but if you're not willing to take on opportunities which are going to stretch and push and grow you, then you're probably not going to be able to practice it. It just ends up being lip service. So I would just add to that final comment, really pay attention to that flexibility. And am I being too closed off? And am I viewing things as settling, which actually aren't settling? They would have a very clear purpose and help me.
absolutely. So, just some closing remarks, basically. Like, change can either alter our circumstances, but it doesn't erase, people's experience, their achievements, their relationships, or even their ability to just contribute. Because even helping others in the career transition process can actually bring about new relationships and serendipitous opportunities. So, 100%. And if you're currently in a career transition and your role has ended, your value hasn't. So, know that you have that. And again, have your coach remind you, because that's certainly part of it. And then think about how you're going to apply that. You don't need to apologize for where you are. You do not need to make yourself smaller by any means. And you do not need to assume that you must lower your aspirations simply because you're sort of working out how to navigate your way through this very changing market. And change is the big word there. I think for us, we would always say embrace the process, because it is a process and sometimes it doesn't always feel comfortable, but bear with it. And again, lean into your coach, because that's going to be very helpful. and just use it to understand yourself more deeply. I mean, you've said this throughout what we've spoken about today, James. Communicate your value more clearly, and explore possibilities that you maybe haven't considered before, because why not? And career transition, yeah, it's not time lost, basically, is yeah, where I'd wrap it. It's an opportunity to reposition yourself and also get ready for what's coming next.
Yeah. And with all that said, it's a hard process. It's a lot of work, and that work sits with the people who are listening today. So
Yeah.
we talk about all the things you can do. It's never lost on me that it's not hard work. But as we've said in multiple of our discussions,
Yeah.
everyone gets an outcome. Everyone we've worked with gets an outcome. So do the work, understand the benefit you can derive from it, and be confident that you will get an outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you as always, James. Always wonderful to catch up, and look forward to catching up with you in September.
Brilliant. Look forward to it. Thanks, Tee-Jay.